The station was alive with movement, a swirl of species from across the galaxy, each carrying their own stories, ambitions, and prejudices. For most beings, appearances were everything. The color of skin, the shape of limbs, the symmetry of eyes, these small details determined whether someone would be trusted, ignored, or feared. The alien woman stepped through the station's main hall, and immediately she felt the weight of countless eyes judging her. Not with curiosity, not with interest, but with something harsher, dismissal and fear. Her skin was not the smooth, symmetrical shade that most species considered beautiful. It shifted subtly, almost as if it were breathing. Her limbs were uneven, her movements slightly awkward by the standards of the galaxy's more graceful species. Some of the beings passing by recoiled, turned away, or whispered under their breaths. Even the security droids, programmed to ignore emotion, seemed to hesitate near her. She had long ago learned to ignore such reactions, but it never became easy. She came with a purpose. Her species had sent her as an envoy, a messenger of knowledge and cooperation. They had watched the galaxy for decades, studying the patterns of conflict and collapse, and they had seen a problem that could not be ignored. Wars were erupting over resources, entire colonies were collapsing under poor leadership, and new forms of interstellar corruption threatened to destabilize regions of space. Her species had survived through intelligence, patience, and empathy. They had strategies and solutions that could prevent disaster, but no one seemed willing to hear her. At first, she tried the formal approach. She approached the diplomatic office, her holographic identification glowing faintly on her chest, and requested an audience with the council representatives. The guards looked her over and shook their heads. She was told to wait, then informed that no appointments were available. She tried again at the trade forum, offering insights on energy distribution and resource management. Merchants and scientists looked at her with polite disinterest, then moved on to others who fit their expectations better. It was exhausting. She had been trained to endure, to maintain patience, to focus on the mission, but even patience has its limits. She wandered through the station corridors, observing the behavior of the species around her. Some ignored her entirely, focused on their own dealings. Others shot glances that were sharp and quick, full of suspicion or disgust. Occasionally, she caught snippets of conversation, an alien remarking, "I do not understand why she is here," or a trader muttering, "She does not look trustworthy." It was never about what she said or did, only about how she looked. In the midst of the rejection, one pair of eyes finally noticed her differently. A human, moving quickly through the crowd, paused when he saw her. He didn't flinch. He didn't turn away. Instead, he studied her for a moment, tilting his head slightly, and then walked over. His name was Elias. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy, thought to be fragile, impulsive, or too emotional to make rational decisions. But there was something about humans. They were persistent, curious, and often remarkably perceptive when others were blinded by prejudice. "Hello," he said simply. His voice carried a calm certainty that made her pause. For once, she wasn't facing fear or mockery. "I'm Elias. Can I ask why you're here?" "My people have observed patterns of conflict and instability across several systems. We have solutions. We wish to prevent unnecessary suffering. But if you're willing, I want to hear everything you have to say." Her words were precise but filled with care. She spoke of her species' history, how they had survived countless disasters on their homeworld through cooperation, emotional intelligence, and long-term planning. She explained the current state of the galaxy, the conflicts over resources, the political instability, the risks that no one was taking seriously. She did not demand power or control. She simply wanted to share knowledge to help the galaxy avoid mistakes that could cost lives. Elias listened with patience, asking questions when something was unclear. He was not just polite. He was genuinely curious, genuinely concerned. As he listened, he began to understand the depth of her mission. He realized that the galaxy's prejudices were blinding everyone to something extraordinary. The alien woman was not dangerous. She was not weak. She was potentially one of the most valuable allies anyone could hope for. Meanwhile, the station continued around them, oblivious to the quiet conversation unfolding. Merchants shouted prices, engineers ran to fix malfunctioning machinery, and guards patrolled, scanning faces for trouble. None of them noticed the small shift that was occurring in that corner. Someone had chosen to see the heart beneath the surface. The alien woman told him about her people's approach to diplomacy, conflict resolution, and disaster prevention. They had methods for detecting instability before it became a crisis, techniques for negotiating peace when it seemed impossible, and systems for sharing resources in ways that benefited everyone. Humans, she said, were often reactive, focused on short-term gain, but her species had mastered long-term strategy. They could teach, guide, and stabilize. Elias nodded thoughtfully. He understood in a way few others did that knowledge alone was not enough. The galaxy would only change if someone had the courage to stand by truth, even when everyone else dismissed it. Humans had done this before. Perhaps now was the time to do it again. "Why do you think they ignore you?" he asked finally, curiosity softening his features. The alien woman's shifting skin dimmed slightly. "They are afraid of what they do not understand. They fear difference. They see what is unfamiliar and assume danger. It is not personal, it is universal, but it is also limiting." She looked at him with eyes that were almost luminous. "They refuse to see potential where it matters most." Humans were not perfect. They had prejudices too, but there was something unique about them. A willingness to act on principle, to recognize value where others saw flaws. He realized that helping her might not only save lives, it could change the way the galaxy viewed humanity itself. As the conversation continued, a small alarm sounded in the distance. A cargo platform had malfunctioned, threatening to collapse and injure several beings. Most onlookers panicked, moving away, shouting at each other. The alien woman glanced toward the chaos. "I can help," she said calmly, rising to her full height. Her movements were deliberate, precise. She issued instructions, coordinated nearby workers, and within moments the immediate danger was neutralized. No lives were lost. Elias watched in admiration. While others froze or turned away, she acted. She did not boast. She did not seek praise. She simply did what needed to be done. For the first time, he understood fully what his species often overlooked. The galaxy underestimated the quiet, the patient, the ones who measured their actions with care. The people around them began to take notice, though not all in a good way. Some whispered about her power, others about her strange appearance. But one small act had shifted perception, at least slightly. The alien woman had demonstrated value, skill, and courage, not through force or intimidation, but through intelligence and empathy. Later, as the station settled back into its usual rhythm, Elias walked with her toward a quieter lounge. He wanted to understand more, to find a way to amplify her message without triggering the fear and prejudice that dominated the station. They discussed strategy, alliances, and communication methods. Every suggestion she made was grounded in logic and experience. Every insight challenged the assumptions of the species around them. For hours they spoke, and as night fell over the station, something remarkable began to take shape. For the first time, a human and an alien, one dismissed for appearance, one underestimated for curiosity, started building the bridge that the galaxy had refused to see. It was slow, tentative, and fragile, but it was a beginning. The alien woman had entered the station expecting rejection. Instead, she found a single ally who could change everything. And Elias had discovered that sometimes the most important work was not in fighting enemies, but in seeing the value in those who others ignored. By the time they parted for rest, a small but significant shift had occurred. A few beings had observed their interactions, noting the alien woman's calm authority and competence. They did not yet understand, did not yet embrace, but seeds had been planted. Seeds that could grow into recognition, respect, and eventually cooperation. The galaxy was vast and prejudices ran deep. But if even one human could see the heart beneath appearances, then perhaps change was possible. Perhaps knowledge and empathy could overcome fear. Perhaps, just perhaps, the alien woman's mission would not fail, not because of her, but because someone finally chose to see beyond the surface. And as she returned to her quarters, Elias watched the station's crowd, thinking of how easily the galaxy could dismiss greatness. But he knew something vital. It was in moments like this, when understanding prevailed over judgment, that humanity's true strength revealed itself. And in that strength, the alien woman's hope found a flicker of light, enough to endure, enough to continue, and enough to prepare for the challenges yet to come. The station had returned to its usual rhythm, but the tension beneath the surface was palpable. Whispers of the alien woman's actions circulated quietly among the various species. Some were impressed, though reluctant to admit it. Others were suspicious, interpreting her calm handling of the cargo platform incident as a sign of hidden power. Prejudice did not fade easily, and appearances still carried more weight than deeds. But Elias did not care what the others thought. He had seen the truth. The alien woman's intelligence, her patience, and her willingness to act for the good of others were qualities far rarer than any physical perfection. He had spent the night reviewing her proposed strategies for stabilizing regions of space plagued by conflict. Her plans were meticulous and deeply logical, yet grounded in empathy. She had studied the patterns of wars, famines, and political collapses for decades, and her people had solutions that could prevent countless disasters. As morning arrived, a crisis erupted that tested everything. One of the major cargo ships leaving the station experienced a critical failure in its navigation systems. It drifted dangerously close to the docking area, threatening to collide with several smaller vessels. The alarms blared, lights flashed, and panic spread. Crew members shouted orders, but fear and confusion made coordination nearly impossible. Most of the station's inhabitants froze, unsure of how to respond. The alien woman stepped forward immediately. Her presence was calm, her movements deliberate. She assessed the situation, noting the positions of each ship, the velocity of the drifting cargo vessel, and the potential hazards to the surrounding area. She began issuing instructions in a clear, precise voice. Redirect energy to the primary thrusters. Engage emergency stabilizers. Evacuate non-essential personnel to safe zones, she commanded. Her words were concise but carried authority. Elias followed her instructions, relaying messages to security and maintenance teams. Others hesitated, some openly questioning whether they should trust her. "Who is she to give orders?" one alien captain muttered, but Elias ignored the objections, focusing on execution. Together, he and the alien woman coordinated a delicate operation to stabilize the cargo ship. Minutes felt like hours, but gradually the crisis was averted. The ship's engines roared to life and it drifted safely away from the docking area. No one was injured. The station had been saved once again, not by force, not by intimidation, but by knowledge, careful planning, and cooperation. For a moment, silence fell over the crowd. Then slowly murmurs began. Some beings looked at the alien woman with newfound respect. Some still whispered about her appearance, but the undeniable fact remained. She had acted when others could not. She had saved lives. Elias approached her once the situation was under control. "They still don't see it," he said quietly, nodding toward the crowd. "Some will never change." If enough beings chose to act on knowledge rather than fear, the balance could shift. And he realized that humans could play a pivotal role. They were often underestimated, yet they had a capacity for empathy and courage that rivaled even the most advanced species. In the following days, the alien woman worked tirelessly. She reviewed data from various sectors, analyzed patterns of unrest, and proposed interventions that could prevent conflicts before they started. Each plan required careful diplomacy and coordination. Many species were resistant, unwilling to accept advice from someone who looked so different. Meetings were postponed, and her recommendations were often dismissed at first glance. But Elias remained her advocate. He presented her ideas to leaders, explained the logic behind her proposals, and highlighted her proven ability to act under pressure. Despite their efforts, obstacles were inevitable. A neighboring system was experiencing a resource shortage, and tensions were rising. The governing council was hesitant to intervene, fearing backlash from multiple species. Rumors spread that the alien woman was manipulating events for her own purposes. Some factions even suggested that her presence was a threat, a danger to be neutralized. The first real test came when an interspecies dispute escalated into a potential conflict. Two factions were on the brink of open combat over control of a vital energy source. Words had failed. Negotiations had collapsed. Panic threatened to spiral into violence. The alien woman requested an audience with the council. They hesitated but allowed it, partly because Elias vouched for her. She presented a detailed plan, outlining how both factions could benefit from resource sharing, how oversight and monitoring could prevent exploitation, and how mutual cooperation could create long-term stability. Her approach was precise, supported by data, simulations, and historical precedent, yet the council members were visibly skeptical. One by one, they raised concerns. "Your species is unknown to us," a delegate said. "How can we trust your guidance?" another added. "Your appearance alone makes others uncomfortable." "Do you expect us to follow instructions from someone we cannot even regard as trustworthy?" She explained that trust was earned through action, not appearances, and pointed to the recent incidents where she had saved lives through decisive intervention. Elias supported her at every step. He spoke of her competence, her insight, and her selflessness. He reminded the council that the goal was not to elevate any species above another, but to prevent unnecessary destruction and loss of life. Slowly, a few delegates began to nod, recognizing the truth in his words. The alien woman's proposals were adopted, though cautiously, with oversight measures and pilot programs in place. Over the following weeks, the implementation of her strategies began to yield results. The resource dispute was managed peacefully. Trade resumed, tensions eased, and cooperation between factions increased. The alien woman continued to provide guidance, adjusting plans based on feedback and unforeseen developments. She did not seek recognition or praise. Her goal was simple: stability, cooperation, and survival. Elias observed these developments with a mix of admiration and concern. He knew that not everyone would accept the alien woman's methods. Prejudice ran deep, and there were still factions resistant to change. But he also understood the potential. If even a small portion of the galaxy embraced her approach, entire systems could be saved from unnecessary conflict. One evening, as the station's lights dimmed and the crowds thinned, Elias and the alien woman walked along a quiet observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass, glittering like distant promises. "They still judge by appearances," Elias said, breaking the silence. "Even after everything you've done. We only need enough allies who are willing to act. That is rare." Delegates argued, security scrambled, and fear spread rapidly. Many species prepared for confrontation. The alien woman observed the incoming vessels calmly. She began analyzing their formation, speed, and potential capabilities. Her calculations were precise. "They are hesitant," she said softly. "They are testing us. They do not intend to attack immediately, but they are evaluating our response." She had prepared for situations like this for years, and she had the insight to act decisively without unnecessary aggression. Together, they coordinated a response. Rather than mobilizing weapons or issuing threats, the alien woman suggested a strategy based on communication, observation, and controlled demonstration of capability. Security teams and council members were skeptical, but Elias insisted on following her guidance. As the hours passed, the unknown fleet adjusted its formation, observing, probing, and testing the station's defenses. The alien woman interpreted their signals, sending carefully calibrated responses that demonstrated intelligence, competence, and non-hostility. Slowly, the situation de-escalated. The fleet did not attack. Instead, it held position, eventually retreating without incident. The council was stunned. They had expected conflict, perhaps even destruction, and instead the alien woman had achieved resolution through strategy, understanding, and calm authority. Some delegates began to murmur, acknowledging that they had misjudged her. Others remained resistant, but a seed of respect had been planted. Elias watched her with quiet admiration. She had turned fear into cooperation, hesitation into action, and prejudice into understanding. Her methods were unconventional, but they worked. And as the station returned to normal operations, a new awareness began to spread. The galaxy had underestimated someone remarkable. The alien woman did not celebrate. She had no need for recognition, no desire for praise. Her mission was not about acclaim. It was about change, stability, and the survival of countless beings. Yet Elias knew that her presence and the human willingness to stand by her had already begun to shift perceptions. In the following days, small but meaningful changes occurred. Delegates began consulting her on complex problems. Merchants and engineers who had once ignored her now sought her guidance. Even those who were slow to accept her methods could not deny the results she produced. The alien woman had demonstrated a simple but profound truth. Actions and insight mattered more than appearances, and courage and empathy could overcome prejudice. As Part 2 drew to a close, Elias reflected on the journey so far. The alien woman had come expecting rejection, yet she found allies willing to act on principle. The station had faced multiple crises and emerged stronger because of her presence. And while prejudice still lingered, hope had been planted. A hope that perhaps one day the galaxy could learn to judge by character rather than appearance. For now, the work continued. There were more conflicts to prevent, more misunderstandings to resolve, and more opportunities to prove that knowledge, courage, and empathy could triumph over fear. And in the quiet moments, when the stars stretched endlessly beyond the observation deck, Elias and the alien woman understood a simple truth. Change begins with those who are willing to see what others refuse to acknowledge. The station had never felt so tense, yet so alive. News of the unknown fleet's appearance had spread across nearby systems. Word traveled faster than any official communication could manage, and whispers of fear mingled with curiosity. Some species were preparing for war. Others debated whether to flee or fortify their positions. And in the midst of it all, the alien woman walked calmly through the corridors, her presence a steadying force. Elias stayed close, watching her move with purposeful ease. Despite the station's chaos, she seemed unshaken, as though the fear of others could not touch her. He had learned to trust that calm. Humans had a history of acting in the face of uncertainty, and he had seen countless examples of courage and ingenuity. But the alien woman was different. She did not act recklessly or impulsively. Her strength came from insight, preparation, and empathy. And now the entire station depended on that strength. The council called an emergency meeting. Delegates from every major faction crowded into the chamber, their faces etched with anxiety. Many still doubted the alien woman's guidance. Others had begun to recognize its merit, but fear made them hesitate. Elias took his place beside her, silently offering support. She did not need it, but he knew it mattered. Human presence often swayed opinions, reminding others that courage and trust could coexist. The alien woman addressed the council with quiet authority. "We face an uncertain situation," she said, her voice calm and measured. "The fleet near our perimeter is evaluating us. Their actions suggest caution, not aggression. Our response will determine the outcome. Panic and force will escalate conflict. Strategy, communication, and demonstration of capability will preserve peace. I propose a coordinated approach that ensures safety while demonstrating readiness. If this fleet attacks while we hesitate, I have seen lives saved. Trust is earned by action, not fear. Let us act together wisely, and we can prevent catastrophe." Rather than preparing for direct conflict, the alien woman coordinated a combination of communications, controlled demonstrations of force, and strategic positioning. She directed droids and crew members with precision, establishing signals and signals interpretations that could communicate capability without threat. Hours passed, and tension built. The unknown fleet moved cautiously, observing, probing, testing. It became clear that their approach was not to attack, but to understand. The alien woman's strategy worked, slowly shifting the balance. The fleet's maneuvers became predictable, less threatening. Using a combination of carefully coded signals and visible but non-aggressive displays of defense capability, the alien woman guided the station's response. Elias watched her at work, realizing that humanity's greatest strength lay in moments like this. Humans had survived countless crises, not because they were the strongest, but because they could perceive patterns, understand motives, and act with empathy. The alien woman embodied these same principles, and together they represented a combination of courage and intelligence the galaxy had underestimated. By evening, the fleet retreated slightly, still cautious but no longer threatening. The council and the station's inhabitants began to understand the significance of what had occurred. It was not a battle won with weapons, but a victory achieved through insight, strategy, and calm leadership. Many species that had doubted her now approached, asking questions, seeking guidance, and attempting to understand her methods. In the following days, the station entered a period of relative stability. Trade resumed, tensions eased, and factions that had once been suspicious began to cooperate. The alien woman worked tirelessly, advising on conflict prevention, resource allocation, and diplomatic negotiations. Each proposal was grounded in logic, supported by data, and aimed at long-term stability. Elias remained by her side, facilitating communication, explaining cultural nuances, and advocating for her acceptance. He observed how small actions could ripple outward, creating change far beyond their immediate scope. A delegation that had refused to meet her a week ago now sought her counsel. A merchant who had dismissed her initially now implemented her recommendations in trade practices. Even species resistant to change slowly began to see the value of her approach. Yet not all were convinced. Some factions still clung to fear and prejudice, arguing that her methods were manipulative or that her species could not be trusted. They saw her actions as anomalies, exceptions rather than evidence. The alien woman understood their hesitation. Change was slow, and the galaxy's habits were hard to alter. But she remained patient, confident that consistent action and proof would gradually shift perceptions. A critical test came when a distant colony reported a potential famine. Resources were scarce, and internal disputes threatened to escalate into violence. Communication channels were poor, and the risk of conflict spreading to neighboring systems was high. The council turned to the alien woman for guidance. She reviewed the colony's data, analyzed the available resources, and proposed a multifaceted plan. It included redistribution of supplies, coordination of transport fleets, and diplomatic engagement with local leaders. The strategy was intricate, requiring cooperation between species that often distrusted each other. Many delegates were skeptical, citing logistical challenges and potential resistance. Elias stepped in, supporting her plan. He emphasized the urgency, the evidence, and the potential consequences of inaction. "We have a choice," he said. "We can act wisely, or we can allow fear and prejudice to decide the outcome. I trust her guidance. If we fail, it will not be from lack of strategy, but from lack of courage." She worked closely with local leaders, understanding cultural dynamics and mediating disputes. Elias facilitated logistical coordination, ensuring that language barriers, protocols, and technical challenges were overcome efficiently. Days passed, and the results were remarkable. The colony received essential resources before famine could take hold. Conflicts were resolved without violence. Neighboring systems were reassured, preventing the escalation of tensions. The alien woman's methods had not only solved the immediate crisis, but created a framework for long-term stability. Word of her success spread rapidly. Species that had once dismissed her for appearance or prejudice began to reconsider. Delegates who had argued against her methods now sought her counsel actively. Even the most skeptical factions acknowledged her competence and foresight. Elias watched the changes unfold with a sense of quiet pride. Humans were often underestimated, yet here they were, playing a pivotal role in facilitating trust, communication, and cooperation. By choosing to act on principle rather than fear, they had helped amplify the alien woman's abilities and change the trajectory of the galaxy. The alien woman remained humble. She did not seek fame or recognition. She had one goal: to prevent unnecessary suffering and create a stable, cooperative galaxy. But the results spoke for themselves. The galaxy had begun to see that appearance was not an indicator of worth. Competence, empathy, and courage mattered far more. The culmination of these efforts came during a summit convened to address galaxy-wide stability. Delegates from countless systems gathered, some still wary, some now supportive. The alien woman presented her vision for a cooperative network of civilizations, emphasizing shared knowledge, conflict prevention, and resource management. She outlined methods for communication, trust-building, and collaboration that could prevent crises before they escalated. Throughout the summit, Elias stood nearby, observing reactions, facilitating discussion, and bridging cultural gaps. His human perspective, combined with her alien insight, created a synergy that others could not ignore. They demonstrated that even the most challenging conflicts could be approached with reason, empathy, and strategic thinking. By the summit's conclusion, a historic decision was made. A coalition of species agreed to implement her methods across multiple regions. Pilot programs were established, monitoring systems were installed, and cooperative agreements were signed. The alien woman's approach was officially recognized as a model for crisis prevention and diplomacy. Elias and the alien woman walked through the now bustling station, observing the subtle but significant changes. Merchants negotiated fairly, engineers collaborated across species, and delegates consulted each other rather than competing blindly. The station felt different, less fearful, more open, more alive with possibility. "They are beginning to see," Elias said quietly. "Not everyone, but enough to make a difference." "Change is never immediate," she replied. "It requires persistence, patience, and the courage to act despite doubt. You have shown courage, Elias. Together we have begun something important. And that one person can make all the difference." The alien woman continued her work, quietly guiding, teaching, and demonstrating that fear and prejudice were poor guides. The galaxy was not perfect. Some species resisted, clinging to old habits and biases. But the foundation had been laid. A model for understanding, empathy, and strategic action existed. And at the heart of it, a simple truth had been proven. Appearances mattered far less than courage, insight, and the willingness to act for the greater good. Elias reflected on the journey. The alien woman had come expecting rejection, yet she found allies who could see beyond the surface. The station, the colony, the council, and now entire systems had benefited from her presence. Humanity had played a pivotal role, not because of strength or technology, but because of perception, empathy, and principle. The alien woman paused on the observation deck, gazing at the stars stretching endlessly into the void. The work continues, she said softly. There are always more crises, more misunderstandings, more opportunities to prevent suffering. And humans will be there, he said. We act when others hesitate, we see what others ignore, and we stand by what is right. That is who we are. Together, we've begun to change minds, save lives, and prove that even the most unlikely alliances can make the galaxy better. And through it all, humanity had shown its greatest strength. Not the sharpness of its weapons, not the reach of its technology, but the ability to act with understanding, empathy, and courage when it mattered most. The alien woman had revealed what many had failed to see: the heart beneath appearances, the potential within those who were dismissed, and the quiet power of knowledge combined with action. And humanity, through Elias and others like him, had proven that seeing that heart and standing by it could change the galaxy forever.